Welcome to another episode of Shift with Elena. God, in this conversation, I'm joined by Rebecca Maciera Kaufman. She's the author of Fit CEO, Be the Leader of Your Life. And I have this book literally on the side of my table because it is so practical with tons of gems of how do you maintain your energy and overall wellness and sharpness and creativity as a leader. And from her experience of just running businesses for decades and managing teams and doing this in different parts of the world, her ability to really maintain that energy and all the things that she's been able to do over her career is really, really amazing. And what I really appreciate about this is because it's so practical. The tips she offers are so practical that anybody can apply today. That is not going to cost you money. That is not going to cost you too much time, right? So throw away the excuses, I don't have time. And so we really dive into deep into some of these strategies. We looked at like what does holistic leadership look like and how do we lead by example. So if you're a leader or an aspiring leader or somebody who is looking to, create these opportunities to take care of yourself and be physically and mentally and spiritually fit, this conversation is definitely for you. And please do order the book. Again, Fit CEO, Be the Leader of Your Life. It's an absolute gem and I highly recommend it. As always, please subscribe, share, and come back for more. Rebecca, welcome to the Shift podcast.
Elena, thank you so much for having me.
I'm really, really excited and inspired to talk to you because, of course, I read your book. It's called The Fit CEO, Be the Leader of Your Life. Yeah, there you go. I mean, I just absolutely love it. I was reading and I was like, yes, yes. And it was like a lot of the things were like reminders for myself about things that I can do differently from just all different sides of well-being. And we'll dive into some of that. But also I was just like, I need to gift this to like everybody I know, especially like women and moms in my life that are just career-driven women, but also, just sometimes we forget about ourselves. So this was a great reminder. We'll talk more about the book, but I'm really interested to understand how did you get to a point where you're like, I really want to put this out there. Tell me a little bit about your background story.
Sure. And thank you for setting the idea of gifting it to everyone, include the men in your life, because this really is for
Yes.
everyone. So the book really came about from my whole career. I was fortunate enough to have an amazing career and really I've lived in 5 countries and I have worked both in strategy in Europe and multiple different locations. And then when I moved back to the US, home is San Francisco, I started off in a very small company in product management. I was interested in general management, moved to a much larger company, Wells Fargo, and was in small business, ran small business there over time, and then moved to Citigroup where I had my most three recent roles, if you will: president of Citibank, CEO of Banamex USA, and then head of the International Bank, and that was over 12 plus years. So I had an extraordinary career leading people, living on airplanes and airports, and having teams in, at one point, 12 countries and clients in 100. So I
Wow.
spent a lot of time, and I'd say my largest team was about 5,000 people. And I spent a lot of time traveling to meet my team, traveling to meet clients. And people would always ask me questions if I was giving a talk somewhere or speaking in a large crowd. And they'd stand in line, and I'd ask my colleagues, like, do people stand in line after you speak? And many of them said, yeah, a couple. But I was like, there are quite a few questions. And I started to pay attention to all these questions I was getting. And over time, on vacation and on breaks, I would write them down and say, I might write a book someday about this. And the questions were really thematically, yes, about leadership, but about my personal way of approaching it. How do you stay
Mm,
fit? How do you stay so high energy? How do you stay so optimistic? And so that was really, it comes from all the people I've worked with, the idea for the book.
mm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And first of all, I admire your career story. I'm just like listening to this, I was like, wow, like I can't even imagine. I've always been like small companies and small teams. So I'm like, oh my God, 5,000 people in multiple different countries. That's like, great problems to solve. Let's put it that way. So it's really inspiring to hear your story on its own. And yes, I think a lot of times when we see leadership, and especially people that are just doing really well from an energy perspective, for making sure they're taking care of themselves and like leading by example, questions do come up. How do you do it? And in your book, you talk a lot about not only mental kind of well-being and physical, but also spiritual. So what brought you to a point where you're like, it's there's so much more to us than just one piece of it. You have this holistic approach to how you see work and how we perform and so on. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, I don't know about the audience, but many of us grew up with this game, Twister, or the song, the hip bone is connected to the thigh bone. So, life, there is no such thing as an isolation of you as a human being, you as a leader, you as a parent, you as a child. We are all total beings. And so, I think over time I learned, early in my career, I really think I approached it as this is my job, and my job is completely and totally 100% separate from my life. And I realized that really didn't work because
Mm,
you bring your life to work every morning when you arrive, right? So if you're driving to work and hit traffic, or if your train is late or your bus is overcrowded, whatever that does to you, you walk into work that morning with that, if you will, mantle of frustration or stress. Now, if you somehow got to work in a carpool and it was amazingly fun, or everything worked perfectly and you found a seat on the train or the metro. So the idea that one goes to work and is this purely professional entity was something I learned early in my career just wasn't real. And so I think part of that learning process for me, I started to share with others of I'm bringing all the elements of my life to work. If a child is sick, I might be stressed. If a parent's sick, I'm going to be stressed. If I'm going through a
mm,
divorce, I'm going to be stressed. If I'm getting married, I'm going to be excited. If my child's going to college, I'm going to be apprehensive, excited. There's all these things you bring to work. And I think I started to realize as I manage more and more people, I really had to pay attention to where they were and of course help them be professional and get the job done, but also
mm.
listen to all the other sides. And I don't mean therapy wise, I mean be aware of what's going on. And so I started to incorporate that in my own life and saying, hey, if I bring more of me to work, I'm actually a better leader. And I got a lot of positive feedback on that. I think the perfectly written speech, reading from notes, sounds like a monologue. The kind of off the cuff chat, really what you do in podcasting, the discussion is much more interesting for the audience, right? Your
Mhm.
personal stories and how you did it are much more interesting than some textbook grid of how to lead. So that I think that's part of how I came to learn about being a total person at work. So really from my experience. Plus, I think being raised by two psychiatrists might have influenced it.
Tell me more about that.
Just two parents who are psychiatrists, so you
Yeah.
probably get a lot of influence from that.
Yeah, yeah, just a different like different way to approach performance and mindset and all those things that make us human. Yeah, no, I think it's really refreshing to hear somebody who's been in really, global companies as a leader to have this perspective because I think we often see this in some companies, not all, but some companies where there's this disconnect between, performance and all the other pieces that make us human. So to your point, like a lot of times performance is measured just based on like your professional self, but there's so much more to what you were saying. Like, like it's around the environment, it's around what's happening at home, and leaders don't necessarily need to solve that for the individual. That's their responsibility, but you have to be aware so that you can lead people in from a different lens, and that's kind of what I'm hearing from you.
Sure, and I think even in business school, I experienced that. We were always in study groups. We had someone in one of our study groups going through divorce, and we all decided how do we want to help that person for so much time. They can't go on forever. They can't, but
Mm,
there's a time that you can help someone out and carry them. And then there's a time where you might say, hey, maybe it's time for a leave of absence. Or so there's just different things you learn. I'd say for me at least, as I started to manage larger and larger teams, I always manage through one-on-ones. I think one-on-ones are the most important management tool because it's a time that you can really ensure that you're aligned on what the person's working on, that you can hold them accountable, that they're making the results and impact they need to make, and you can be teaching and inspiring. And I think through all that, you're hearing what's going on. So if they come in and you see a very different face, people show it on their face often how they're feeling. The first question is, how you doing? Not for
mhm,
an hour. It's not what you're doing for an hour, but oh, I'm sorry your father passed away. Do you need to take time off? Do you want to meet, next week instead? Do you need a break? Or they look so excited. I just got engaged. Congratulations. That's fantastic. You acknowledge it, you congratulate them, and then you go back to business. Again, it's not about hours of, as you already said, about but paying attention to where that person is.
Mhm. But that would also require a little bit of vulnerability, I think, from the leader side, because, I'm just thinking like, last time I would go into like a leadership office and wanting to kind of share what's going on in my life with that particular superior to me, right? It's only if they have made it okay for me to share, meaning they talk to me in a more, just in a more vulnerable way. And because I feel like sometimes you go into an office of a senior leader and it's very just like work, work, work. And so you don't feel like you can share. So how do you create that environment that people feel comfortable actually sharing when you do ask them, how are you doing? Or what's going on? Versus just saying, no, 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 everything's fine.
So it's a two-way street. It's a very fine line. One should not show up at work and just spend all day talking about themselves, right? That would be quickest path to exit, right?
Yeah.
Um, but we're human beings. Connection is critical. So I think it's just about a small amount of time as the leader to say, how are you? How was your weekend? Great. Everything going well? Great. How's your team? A few minutes. And if you're wanting to share and you don't see that opening, I wouldn't,
Hmm.
because I don't think you can share if there's not a receptivity to it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's kind of my point. Yeah, because I think, but that can, and I think, I think it's just being aware as well. I see this a lot in like young people. So I'll give you an example. With like I work with a lot of Gen Zs at the moment, and I see them. They will share what's going on. They'll share their concerns only if I'm a little bit more open to, like, I try to create that space. And then same thing for myself. Like when I go into a senior leadership's office, if I feel like it's not always like a professional conversation, then I feel more comfortable sharing other things with them. To your point, to an extent, there's fine lines, right? But I think that, like, there's still leaders out there that are like a wall, and I think at that point, like, you don't want to share anything with them. And I wonder how much it's hurting the organization performance, productivity, and all those things for people who are just really stonewalled. But also, I guess sometimes you have to be, maybe, I don't know, in a business world, it's tough, it's cutthroat. Would you say you
Well,
have to sometimes be in that
I think
situation?
everything is a situation. Everything is depending on the
Mm,
situation. If you have someone who's not performing and all they want to do is talk about their dog, and 24/7 they want to talk about their dog and their dog and their dog and their dog, and would be really honest saying, hey, I need X, Y, and Z done. When are they going to get done?
mm,
Um, Seems that you're really distracted. If you need to take
mm-hmm,
time off to take care of your dog, then take your PTO, right? I think
mm-hmm.
it's giving people boundaries. And as you know, in Fit CEO, I have 1/5 of the book is on boundaries. So I think helping people set clear boundaries of being friendly at work is fantastic, but work is not your social scene.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's understanding. Like, you want to be caring, you want to be connected, but we're all at work to get a job done and make an impact and make a difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a different perspectives, and that's, I see this quite a bit, and I think there's also a dose of reality that we need to bring into the workplace, which is also good. Being from a Russian background, it's a very tough background, so always, like, it keeps me grounded, but, like, at the same time, I try to adjust as much as I can in terms of, like, between being too tough and then vulnerable, and creating that space and creating boundaries. I think that's so difficult for people, especially like new leaders and organizations. But in your experience over the years, how were you able to just build up this understanding of people and how we operate through your own experiences, or have you had mentors? Have you observed bad leadership to where you're like, I don't want to do that, I want to be better?
I'm sure I've seen it all. I've worked for many, many organizations and many, many people. And of course, I've seen bad leadership. I've seen amazing leadership. I've seen good leadership. I've seen mediocre leadership, seen it all. But that's because I've worked for so many years. Absolutely. I think one of the gifts of a bad leader is, what do you not want to do?
Mm,
I once had a leader. It was very funny. I remember sending the person a note saying, "Hey, by the way, next week I'll miss this meeting because I have a small surgery." And the person sent me an email back saying, "Noted." And I thought, wow, interesting. That would be not be my response to any employee I ever had. It would be, gee, I hope it goes well. Good luck.
Yeah.
Everything okay? So again, I've worked for people that don't seem to have a level of human response, and I have noted it and thought, gee, that's not something I'd ever do. So I think you do observe, and then great leadership. I've had leaders that really made it fun. So I think I've seen it all, and you adopt the ones that fit with your own style. So I have always adopted what worked for me. I had a leader once that I thought did a fantastic job with education. Once a quarter, she would have us read a book together. And so I really adopt that, love that, and would gift my team a book once a quarter and have it sort of run through discussions. And so one of the things that I love about what you're saying is that Fit CEO is one of the perfect things an L&D leader or any leader could gift to their team and discuss. And I've had quite a few companies do that, buy the book for
Mm.
the whole teams. And it's a gift of health and a gift of, I care about your total being.
Mm. What else can HR and L&D professionals, learning and development professionals, organizations do to help their leaders be those fit CEOs, right? Like gifting a book is one, but if somebody's like, listen, if I gift them a book, maybe they won't read it. What are some other things that I can embed as a
Oh yeah,
professional in my workplace? Yeah.
gifting a book without a process around it doesn't do anything. So you have to really,
Mm.
if you're going to gift the book, then you'd have to say, well, let's have a brown bag lunch on it, or let's have a discussion group on it, or let's have the author come in and zoom in and talk
Hmm.
about it with a Q&A. So all the folks all the companies that have bought my book always have had me zoom in for an hour, depending on how many they bought, an hour or two, different time zones, and have an ability to talk about it. That gets people very interested in reading it and making it real for them, and discussion groups. For me, if I gifted my team a book, we absolutely talked about it at one of our meetings, and then talked about, are there elements of it we want to incorporate into our routines, habits, culture, so they became a part of our learning environment. So I think for a learning environment, adults learn by doing, not by just reading. So you have to then say, which are we going to adopt? So we just read a book on habits. Are there 3 as a team we want to adopt? So maybe
Hmm.
we want to adopt more walking meetings, or maybe we want to adopt more if we have a 3-hour meeting, we're going to get up every hour and put our arms in the air and breathe more. Or maybe we're going to, so just things like that. You can, if you don't actually act on it,
Hmm.
and the best way adults learn is by teaching. So one
Hmm.
of the things you can do is say, hey, we just spent an hour and a half on this and the habits. How are you going to now teach your teams about it? So I think
Hmm.
if you think about L&D and HR professionals as helping the leaders do that, if you will, activation of a concept, and then embedding and repetition of the concept.
Mm. And from your experience, from when companies brought you in to talk about those things, what are like top 2 things, like themes that came out from those conversations that were like really surprising to you, or maybe like 2 topics from the book that people found really needed in that time?
Really different by company, because every company
Mm-hmm.
has a different product, work ethic, culture. I would say for some of the tech companies, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the questions were much younger employees, many more engineers, and a lot of the questions were about boundary setting. It's Zoom 24/7 or hybrid. A lot of these tech companies are entirely remote. So I found I got a lot more questions about how do you set boundaries, and how do you not work.
Mm-hmm.
For my when I would be with like a Fortune 100 company with lots of employees, they gifted thousands of ebooks to their employees. Then those discussions often were about, particularly one company where they all traveled to their client sites, were about how do you, live so much time in hotels and restaurants and airplanes and be fresh and optimistic and ready. What do you do? And so we talk a lot about habits for travel, habits to keep yourself literally hydrated, literally moving, literally flexible with, okay, your plane got canceled 3 times. How do you not just get so frustrated that you're not at your best. So a lot of discussion about how can you be at your best when you show up at the client.
Yeah,
Nervous
it's
Storm.
a good call out for the tech and kind of engineering minds backgrounds, because I see this quite a lot. I'm in software development space as well, and boundaries is one of the biggest topics that come up. And I think some part of it is also because of especially in a remote company, when you're remote, there's almost this fear that if I disconnect, if I'm not available, then like I don't seem like I'm working. So it's like being tied to your desk because especially because they're like, okay, well, obviously with everything that's going on, you're worried about your job and you want to hold on to your job, so you want to be available and accessible at all times. But it's like, what's the boundary there? Like how much is too much, right? So it's a good call out. And I remember from your book that pertaining to travel, that you are really good at, like, no matter where you are, you will get that workout in. Even if it's a little bit, you will use the hotel gym and you will get that workout in. So talk to me a little bit about what happens when you don't, and what's the benefit of making sure you get that physical movement in?
It's funny. All my notes for the book were pre-COVID, so I wrote it. COVID hadn't happened. I mean, we were in COVID in 2020 when we were finalizing it, my co-author and
Hmm.
I, Lillian. And what's interesting is I learned a lot in COVID about how to even do workouts even more without a gym, right? So I have in the book ways to do it, like in your hotel room with a towel. You can do push-ups and stretches. But let's say you're exhausted. You have to listen to your body. Your plane was late by hours. There's no time. You only have a few minutes. A few jumping jacks, a few stretches, anything to get the blood flowing and
Hmm.
give your body like the energy to start the day. So one of the ways to come out of just feeling depleted is have a couple glasses of water when you get up or before a meeting, and then put your arms in the air, and you're going to
Hmm.
start to have your oxygen flow, your lungs open up, and smile. When you smile, you're actually creating more space for oxygen in your brain, and it's making you feel strong, better,
Yeah.
alive. So they're just like things you can do for a few minutes to bring energy to your body.
Mm.
Again, you have to hydrate. You cannot be dehydrated and do anything really.
Mm. Yeah, those are super practical. And yeah, I mean, like, even if I just do this, like, for people who are listening to this, if you just open up your arms and just take a moment, like, it does bring already a lot of energy, because you open up your chest, and there's a lot of power there. And I think that's the misconception, that when it comes to maintaining that energy in your day to day, it's about these big things, like, I need to make an hour for the gym, and I need to do meal prep, and I need to do all these things, and it sounds like that's not the reality.
No, and I think you have to have go-tos. Like sometimes when I'm super busy, now they sell hard-boiled eggs already peeled. I mean, sometimes you just
Mm-hmm.
need to get some whole food that's real, that is fast, but don't buy fast food, right? But you can get
Yeah.
fat, you can get grapes, wash them. You can get whole eggs already even peeled and hard boiled in stores now. I mean, it's kind of amazing. Even at Starbucks and all these places, they have peeled hard boiled eggs for you. So I think there's ways to, even when you don't have time, you don't have to do all this meal prep. I mean, it'd be, and you can buy lettuce already washed. I mean, we have convenience like nobody's business nowadays. So there is a way to get whole foods, whole vegetables, whole proteins, and there is a way to find 10 minutes in a day to exercise a couple times a day. And I don't mean in a gym. I mean taking the stairs. I take the stairs in airports as long as I don't
Mm-hmm.
have a suitcase, right? Once I've checked my
Yeah.
bag, I take the stairs. I'm not
Yeah.
taking the stairs with some big bag. So I think these choices all the time and where you park, be delighted you couldn't find a parking place right in front of where you were going instead of being
Mm-hmm.
frustrated. Like change the entire paradigm. Oh my gosh, my parking place is 4 blocks away. Woohoo, I got 4 more blocks in. So then you have
Yeah.
to add a little bit of time. It doesn't work if you're running on edge and you have no time between anything. You got to start thinking about making the time. And so a lot of things I introduced were 50-minute meetings instead of hour meetings with my team, because I talked to the team and no one had time to go to the bathroom, to grab a glass of water, to answer an emergency phone call from a client or a team member, or you were late. So once you start adding, if you really have disciplined 50-minute meetings, you can return a phone call and go to the restroom or grab a glass of water and get ready for the next meeting.
Yeah, it's
Completely calms your
mm.
nervous system from being back to back and rush. So there's 1,000 tips and tricks in the book like this. Well, you know you're
Mm-hmm.
ready.
Yeah, it's super practical. As I'm listening, so I'm like, everybody has that time. It's a choice. Like that's one thing that you said that stood out to me is like you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice and an intent and a habit to make this happen. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm curious, as you kind of looking at the future of work, coming from this, really rich experience of being a leader in organizations and with everything that's shifting in the workplace today, what are your thoughts, when it comes to the workplace and how we as leaders can best prepare? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So, if you think about the phrase that the only thing you can count on in life is death and taxes, I would add to that the only thing you can count on in life is change. It's always changing. So, a
Hmm.
universal skill is flexibility, agility, and resilience. And I would say the more you build your flexibility, literally muscularly, helps with your mental flexibility and agility. And those two things will help you be more resilient. So the stronger you are in your ability to stretch and move will help you physically, and it's completely linked to your brain. And so all the stuff that we talk about to do to get in your body in the book, and most chapters have a little section of get in your body, pen to paper, immediate and imperfect action. All of that will help you increase your flexibility, your agility, and give you resilience. And I would say, in the face of this ever changing, super dynamic, AI growing world, um, those are key skills. And I think the book can really help with that.
You know what I also love about what you're saying is that I think there's a lot of focus on like, well, in order for you to be a great leader and prepare for the future, you need to make sure you know what's going on with AI. You need to have an MBA, whatever it is, right? But I think, and all of that can be true. But I think at the base of it all, at the end of the day, it really comes down to you as an individual and how you take care of your well-being, because
Yep.
nothing will matter if your health is not there.
Well, exactly, exactly. And so there's, I believe, two chapters in the book about putting your own oxygen mask on first, because um, you have to take care of yourself before you can take others. You cannot be a great leader if you are physically falling apart.
Yeah. What are you most excited about in the next year or 2 years? Like, what are you working on? Obviously, you have the book out. What else are you excited about that you want to share with the audience?
Well, of course, I always love speaking on the book. So thank you for having me here today. I'm super excited. I spend my time now at RMK Group LLC. I'm entering my sixth year of being in business for myself. I advise startup CEOs and I advise C-suite members of large Fortune 100 companies, and I just love working with these leaders. I get the chance now to work one-on-one with a lot of leaders and help them be the best leader they can be, based on their skills, and really be more of them and learn and grow, and I think deal with all this ever-changing environment. So it's really
Mhm.
exciting, and I get to work in a lot of different industries now. So it's fun. It's consulting, but it's fun to help other leaders now. I also sit on boards, and so I enjoy that.
Yeah, that's great. And just a question, a personal question. Out of the countries that you lived in, where did you enjoy the most?
San Francisco, the USA
Yeah.
is the best place. I mean, we are so lucky here. We have so much autonomy and ability to run as fast as we want. I mean, I love living in France. I love living in Hong Kong. I love living in Finland. I love living in England. I liked every place I lived there. I love different cultures and different languages. But, well, first of all, this is home. And second of
Hmm.
all, it's amazing. I've worked in all those countries. We really allow, at every level in this country, folks to have, to make an impact.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'll make sure to link the book in the show notes and your website in case people want to reach out and have a conversation. I really, really mean it. I'm gonna gift it to a couple of friends who I feel could benefit from this, and I have it like on my desk because I think it's a great reminder. And what I love about it is that it's practical and it really makes you pause and answer some questions that we often don't want to answer about our current state. So I really appreciate it. Thank you again for the
Thank
book and
you.
for being here.
You've made my day, because Lillian and I had the dream that the book would actually sit on someone's desk and could just be a reference guide of, I need some energy. What should I do to help my energy right now? So Wonderful. So thank you so much, and thanks for gifting it to your friends.